Good morning. It's Hi, Shelly. Hi. We're all literally just waking up. I recorded a video yesterday and I literally got through editing 90% of it last night, and I woke up and I just thought, I hate it. So I'm re-recording something. It's important for me to get something out today. I've had a lot of growth and change this year, and a lot. I've done some deep dive work into childhood trauma, into what it was growing up with it, and really in a big way, how it's affected me as an adult, how it's affected my relationship, how it's affected friendships, how it's affected my relationships with my family members, how it's affected business, how it's affected just how I exist in the world. And I've learned so much, and I have so much stuff I'm excited to share with you in the next year, the next decade. But I feel like in order to do so, I have to connect some dots. And this may be more for me than it is for any of you, but it is important to me to be fully in it. And when I say that, I'm one of those people that I'm either completely in or I'm completely out, and there's not really an in-between. And I've really been struggling to get back to this creative space, and for a lot of reasons, which I'm going to explain some. And I'm ready to get back, but I don't really know how to do it without filling in some blanks for all of you and also for myself. So I just want to let you in a little bit on what derailed me. And the reason I think this is important is not because I think I need an excuse to not have uploaded. I think it's important because life happens, and I think sometimes we don't always talk about the things that prevent us from doing the things that we're truly passionate about. I'm hoping that in sharing this, that if you have gone through something similar, you feel less alone. I'm hoping that if you've ever passed judgment on someone who's taken personal time to themselves, that maybe you give it a second thought. Also, really to just start opening up these lines of communication more, because I really think it's important. So a little bit of backstory for me. If you're not following me on Instagram, you're probably not aware of this. I grew up in a very abusive home, particularly domestic violence. There wasn't a lot of physical abuse directed towards me and my sisters, but there was a ton directed towards my mother. And it was incredibly violent for years. And that's not even the half of it. I'm eventually going to talk about that a little bit more and in detail on my channel. But in the meantime, if you want to get caught up on Instagram, I have some highlights saved. But the reason I bring that up is because it's a huge part of who I am. It's a huge part of how I go out into the world. It's how I address the world. And it affects me in a lot of ways. In the past, I've really dug into how it affected me in my childhood. But what I hadn't really dealt with up until starting about a year ago was how it affects me now, how it affects me day in and day out. What are things that happen in my brain because of trauma? What are things that I have an emotional response to because of trauma? How are my relationships affected because of trauma? And last year, around this time, I got confronted with my relationship with my mom. If you know anything about domestic violence, surviving comes as priority over just about anything else. And it makes it hard to develop relationships when you're in survival mode. And so the best way I can describe it is that my mom and I had a great relationship, but it was very off when it came to strictly mother-daughter relationship. And when we no longer had to band together for survival, we really had to take some time to navigate this new relationship, and we really struggled with it. It was difficult, to say the least. And October of last year, it finally, after a few blow-ups, we finally said, okay, let's go and get some counseling. And we started doing counseling together, and it was amazing, but it was also the beginning of another huge blow up, to where we disconnected for a little bit and we weren't speaking. And that was a huge thing for me. So it was kind of the beginning of this downward spiral of self-doubt, and not feeling worthy enough, worthy of love, worthy of praise, worthy of affection, worthy of speaking my truth. They were present previously to this blow up with my mom. I don't want to say this was the beginning, but this was the beginning of me finally addressing it. So that's why I say it's the beginning. You know, I was always a protector of my family, and now I was essentially on the outside of my family, and it was a identity crisis, a value crisis. Like it was just a lot of things. As I was navigating this with my family, it also started to rear its head in other places. In my relationship with my partner, in different ways. It highlighted things that we needed to work on. And so, you know, we had to get down in the trenches together as well. It highlighted things that I wanted out of friendships and I didn't want out of friendships. It highlighted insecurities in places that I had a lot of fear. These things are happening with my family, and I hit a big milestone on YouTube. I had my first video go like essentially viral in the curly world. I had less than 10,000 subscribers, I believe, at the time, and it got over 200,000 views in a month. And as this was happening, I was getting all this exposure that I really wasn't ready for, not at that time. I was in a time where I felt like I just wanted to hide a little bit. So with a video like that, something that goes viral, that gets exposed to thousands of more people, comes a lot more criticism, and I was getting a ton. And some of it wasn't that big of a deal, but people also started commenting on my body and my thought process and how I thought about things and how I believed, and it crumbled me in a respect. It felt like too much at the time. I was already questioning my value because of where I stood within my family, and now I had to question it in my workspace, a space that I was so proud of, a space that I had worked so hard on, that I had offered so much of myself to, and now I didn't feel worthy to even be in this space. Then within that same time period, so these things happen. I'm, disconnect from my mom, essentially disconnect from my family in a big way. And then works kind of beat me up a little bit. So I got this haircut in December that I hated. And it was a beautiful cut. It just wasn't what I wanted. And it kind of made me crumble inside as well. And second guess my validity in this space just as much, if not more, because I thought, like, how can I educate on something that I can't even navigate myself? And all of us know, you can know so much about your hair, you can know so much about a haircut that you want, and it has to relate to the hairstylist. You have to be on the same page. Like, there's so many things that come in between those 2 points, but it was hard for me to see and accept that because I was now affected by it. So that made me kind of go further into my hole a bit. Then Daniel's dad was visiting from Germany, and that brought up some stuff for him, and that was kind of heavy for the both of us. And then at the end of that month, I ended up spending Christmas away from my family. Not the first time, but it was the first time that we were 10 minutes away and not speaking, and could have spent the holiday but didn't. When my family didn't really make an effort for me on Christmas, I again, even though I knew, I had an innate feeling that this was just a necessary boundary that we needed to move forward, I couldn't help but feel like I didn't matter, that I didn't bring enough value to make that extra effort. And that's Gohan, by the way. It was really devastating. And that's not the reality for my family. They were navigating their own things. My mom was losing her best friend to cancer. My sister and her partner were dealing with other things outside. That wasn't the reality, but that is how it felt. I just felt like another push to hide. Another push to hide. I took a even bigger step back, and I did a lot more inner work. And I've been working with a coach for most of the time since I've been here in Jersey City. I've done more bouts with hypnosis, spiritual healing, Reiki, those kinds of things. And I've felt a huge shift, a very, very huge shift. One that I'm very excited about, and one that feels ready to disconnect from all those past fears and feelings of inadequacy that were preventing me from doing what I'm good at and what I'm passionate at. So if that hasn't made sense until now, that is why I am putting this video out on New Year's Eve, is I'm ready to let go of the fears that I carried. Fears of being seen, the fears of being heard, the fears of standing in my truth, the fears of showing and sharing what I know. It's all staying in 2019, that decade, staying there. It's staying there. And 2020 and beyond, I'm ready to step into my power, and I'm ready to share what I know the best way that I know it. I literally have my notes on my phone filled with ideas of content to bring, and ideas and things to educate on, and I'm really excited for it. And on top of that, 2020 is a year where I'm going to start sharing a hell of a lot more of myself and my journey with domestic violence and healing from trauma, because I believe that plays such a big part in this. Every time that I have stepped into this journey of learning to care and love my hair, it became the entryway, the key to navigating my own self-care and learning to love myself and navigate my negative self-talk and my fear of truly being who I am at my core and being that everywhere, and not being afraid to be seen as that person. So 2020, I'm ready.